So after joining in this session, you will be able to gain one PDU, and PDU information will be displayed towards the end of the session. So let's get started. I'll start with quick introduction about Dr. Khushbu Gupta. So Dr. Khushbu Gupta, in last 19 years of her career, she's worked across product management, business operations, and customer experience roles. She's handled diverse portfolios. She's a certified master trainer, having delivered training and enablement programs globally. She is a part of jury for American Society of Quality SATA Awards. She was selected by Fox Story India's top 50 most powerful women 2022. Her story was published in leading media publications like Z News, Fox Story Magazine, and many other platforms. And she's a distinguished Toastmaster speaker. So we all, on everyone's behalf, Dr. Khushbu, I welcome you for today's session. Thank you so much for taking out time and imparting this knowledge to all of us. And to set the context, in this session, we'll get the basic understanding of AI and Gen AI technology, commonly used technology apps, evolution of technology and implications from business perspective, change management, and role of project leaders. And another thing that I wanted to call out, which Dr. Khushbu specifically mentioned to call out, that these are her views. So her organization views are not taken into consideration. It's a personal view, all right? And apart from that, any questions that you have, it is going to be an interactive session. We'll keep on taking everyone's view as and when we proceed to in the session. But any major questions that we have, we would like to take up at the end of the session. So with that, again, I would like to welcome Dr. Khushbu. Dr. Khushbu, over to you.
Thank you so much, Deepti, and thank you for organizing this and having this setup. So I see quite a few of you are already here. So thanks everybody for joining at this time. So I'll just start sharing and get started in this view. Just a second. And go to the main screen. You can tell me once you see my screen.
We can see your screen.
Okay. So thank you, Deepti, for the kind introduction. And yeah, these are the topics that we are going to cover. And feel free to put your perspectives. And I know everybody is so jazzed about learning about Gen AI. I'm sure a lot of you might have already done some courses. You may already be practicing it. So feel free to share your learnings, because considering this is a very, very evolving topic, what we discussed today may not be relevant, in the same way in 5 years from now. 5 years from now, it's going to be a different context altogether. And yes, as Dipti mentioned, this is my perspective, while based on my research and what I see happening around in technology as well as industry. And let's dwell into the topic and share knowledge with each other, right? So that's the whole objective here. So I'll start with the basics, considering, not assuming that, everybody is from software industry. So there could be people, project manager, is a role which spans across industries, different experiences, different backgrounds, different domains. So considering that, I'll just start with the basics, like in terms of, just getting back to, okay, what is AI? Just thinking about that perspective. Like programming has existed from many, many years, and how AI is transforming the landscape we have all seen in past decade as well. And now we're talking about Gen AI, right? So how things are progressing, we have to think about that aspect. And before we move there, just understanding what AI is, right? So referring to the field of computer science that aims to create machines capable of intelligent behavior, right? So simulating the cognitive reasoning functions and the components in a broad way. When we start off with the thinking about AI, there are four key components. While this is a fun conversation, right, that sometimes we see there are a lot of courses and a lot of topics which are like AI and ML, right? So while like if we think about the components of AI, when we say AI, it already includes ML, it already includes machine learning. So machine learning is a component of AI, So while it is a very significant one, that's why you see it's referred to as separately by a lot of places that it's AI and ML, but actually AI is a broader perspective, and ML is one component of AI, which is about machine learning in terms of what is about the algorithms through which the learning of the computer systems happen. So that's the context, like what is machine learning in terms of setting the learning patterns, then natural language processing, and that is one key, that we are moving away from the traditional methodology where the whole concept of programming and technology was about learning a language. Like back in the days when I completed my schooling, it was very common for people to learn C and C++, and then Visual Basic and all those technologies, right? And now people, of course, on technology side would go for Python and other technologies. Not that they're not relevant, but then the power of AI is that irrespective of whether you are into coding or not, you can still play with technology, make technology work for you through natural language. And that is the change that is coming about in recent times, which is becoming very, very strong. The other piece is the computer vision, the capacity of machines to interpret visual information. So it's not just about text input, it's not just about conversations, it's also about the graphics and visual inputs. You can just draw something and it can convert into an input to the computer. So coming from that era of millennials, that we saw how computers evolved, right? With some very, very specific instructions or long code to do just one operation of addition or subtraction. We have come a long way to reach a point where we are talking about just giving an input as a visual, and then automatically there is an output generated. And then finally, of course, robotics have been around for a while, but then enabling robotics with AI and making sure that the robotics is functioning with the learning behavior, that is actually taking it to the next level. So these are the broad four components of AI. And I can just see if there is something on chatbot. Okay. So I see nothing specific. So feel free to write your perspectives, your experiences on chatbot, anything you think is resonating. Feel free to just, mention that, because that way I know, it's all going in the right direction. And if you want more information on any topic, we can come back to that as well. So that's just setting the stage for what components of AI are. Now, how does it function? Like, what is the mechanics behind AI? Like, it's not magic, right? So it may appear like magic, but how does it function? So these are the broad components, like from structural perspective. One is the data. Now, why it is important to know about this aspect is that when we think about this technology, when we talk about all the Gen AI apps and other pieces, it's very easy to get used to of it. It's very easy to just say, okay, let me just ask chat gpt and I'll get all my answers. Why it is important to know this is that there's a lot of relevance of what data is going into building those models, right? So it's important to know where that information is coming from. So the foundation of any AI model is the data. And then as project leaders, we know already that it's always, a garbage in, garbage out is a very old terminology, right? So one of the key challenges which always say is, and which is getting better now, is the quality of data. So the output would depend on the quality of the data, relevance of the data. So this is a one component we have to remember, that foundation of any AI model is the data. And as we start using these technologies, we have to remember this point, that everything is based on the quality of data, and if the quality of data is not right, we may get wrong outputs also. So that's why it's important to understand how it works. Then of course algorithms and what setups have been done. So how it has been trained to learn the different sources of data, so the training and what kind of guidance has gone into it. And then of course the neural networks, in terms of how it's structured and how the deep learning is happening across. So this is the backdrop of how AI functions, and understanding that will give you a context of what to do and what not to do, which we'll come to at a later segment. And then, of course, narrow AI versus Gen AI. Like, so because AI as a term has stayed for a while, I'm just like I've just put it in a tabular format in terms of understanding what has changed. What is the all the buzz about Gen AI and how it is different from what was already existing? So just very very simplistic way, I have tried to put it forward. Although this can be a topic in itself, a couple of hours of discussion on the differences and how it is changing. But just to give a broad structure of how things are changing. So what is the difference between the Alexas and Chat GPTs and Google Bards, right? So how it is changing. So the key differences is that about the adaptability. Number one, that how it is changing from being very very adaptable and having the applicability across different domains with minimal human intervention. So these are the key components that differentiate the Gen AI bit, right? So, and then there is because there is a cross domain knowledge, there is a general world knowledge there is a likelihood of generating new content. While the narrow AI, which was traditional AI, is primarily on specific use cases which are trained. Now, the Gen AI can learn from different components and different sources of general knowledge, different segments, and different data points, and then also generate new content based on that. So, the applicability is much broader and the possibilities are immense. So, from Adobe standpoint, there is one you may have tried the Firefly app, which is all about generating new images. So, you give a prompt that, hey, I want to generate an image of a boy sitting under a tree, and it will automatically create that graphic for you. So that is one way of just generating an image or a graphic just by text input. So that way you do need not know. Okay, so I got a comment. Not all are from IT. Keep talk at basic level. Sure, definitely. That's the reason why, we have not even reached the Gen AI topic yet. We are just setting the stage, and feel free to add your questions, right? So I'm keeping it very, very simplistic, considering, yes, that not everybody would be from a software background. So that's why we have these extra slides here. So if you have specific questions on that, feel free to add those in, right? So how it is generating new content is like you just put a text prompt that I want to view an image or something like, a boy sitting under a tree, the system will automatically generate an image. Unlike, the earlier times where it would be that based on the, you have to have those skills to draw directly on the system, right? So if you don't have those skills, you would not be able to. So those are the things, which app or website we're talking about to generate. So it's Adobe Firefly that I'm talking about. So I mentioned on the right side of the table, as examples, here it is mentioned as Adobe Firefly, which is about generating images, right? So of course there are many examples, right? I'm just taking one example. There are multiple different. I mean, if you go and start, searching the tools for AI, there are multiple different organizations coming up with. Google Bard is another example, right? So Google Bard is coming up with their own chat-based AI system. Chat GPT has been around for a long time, and people know it very well. There are many other smaller apps that are also coming our way, which help in specific use cases, right? So this is just a broad differentiation between what we had before and what we are coming up with. Like the entire industry is moving towards. So now again defining what generative AI is. So just coming to the main topic, which is about it's a set of models that describe what you want in your own words. So the key here is in your own words. You don't need to know coding. You don't need to know anything fancy to use Gen AI powered. And then visualizing and generating content to match your prompt. So based on your input, the content is generated. So and of course it's not replacing humans. So a lot of times this comes up that is going to replace humans, but no, it's not. It's actually accelerating the ideas and bringing the visions to life. So that is the premise of Gen AI. And then the key characteristics per se would be it's very adaptable, which we mentioned in the previous slide as well. It's learning as it grows. As you give more and more prompts, it will also learn from your input. For example, again, so take the same example. If you don't like the output, that no, I don't like this image that has been generated, you can again give another prompt that, you know what, like I would like the sky to be of a different color or something different. So as you're giving more and more inputs, it's also learning. So maybe the next time when you ask for a similar thing, it will already have feedback, not just from you, but from multiple users who are actually working on that, and it's learning alongside. It's versatile, so you can think about, so there is immense potential in the creativity of what kind of questions you ask, right? So the versatility is such that nobody can imagine, you know, the creativity lies in what you ask the system to do. So that's the versatility of it, and it will generate something, right? So how relevant it would be, how well done it would be, that's a different issue, because it's still learning, but at the same time there's a versatility of what can be generated. And then contextual understanding. So if you've already set the context that, hey, I'm, doing a project for my child, it's a school project, and there is a art initiative, so you can set the whole context. And thinking from project manager's perspective, like if you are generating some let's say schedules, right, you can set up the whole question in a way, when we go to, let's say, chat gpt or something, you can just say, hey, I have a project, there are 5 constraints, I have 5 resources, this is a business problem. You can set the entire context and then ask your question. You don't need to do a lot of stuff which you used to do manually. Then set the context, ask questions. It will generate maybe an entire resource allocation chart for you. It will generate, it will also give you a timeline, so you don't have to manually, draft a timeline. You can just say, okay, these are my problems, these are the constraints. Can you generate a pipeline report? It will generate a pipeline report and come back to you, as long as it has the data in the right way. And then if you have more questions about that, it generates it, and then ask more questions, automatically it will remember the context that you had set in the beginning and give you answers to those questions based on that context. So that's another aspect of it. Then autonomous decision making, and then creativity and problem solving. So we discussed about all these points already. So broadly, just setting the stage for what generative AI is, per se. And then how is it relevant? So before we jump into these metrics, one report that I read was, the World Economic Forum is saying that in next 5 years, about 75% of the companies will move to AI based working. So 75% of the organizations will move towards that. And also, based on some of the consumer research, this is the result from a report which was published this year, which is that 89% of the consumers say they want companies to use generative AI to improve the quality of their products and services. So the public opinion and the consumer opinion is fairly positive. And then there are 10% of the people consumers who say that companies should never use generative AI. Then 34% of the consumers rank responsibility as a top priority for generative AI, with using it to improve their customer experiences coming second as 30%. So that is the second top responsible factor there. And 3% say that out of the Gen Z, and 5% of millennials say that brands should not use generative AI at all. So we have some folks on this side of who are positive about generative AI, which is the majority bulk, and then there are some apprehensions also with some bulk of people. So, and that's a key where while we have to move forward, but there are important aspects to consider as we move forward with the generative AI journey, which of course we'll discuss in the next slides. Now why there are concerns. So there are some challenges and ethical concerns, and considering the project leaders are at the center of it, it's important to cover these aspects when any new generative AI implementation is happening in your organization, or if you're using it for your own work. So first of all, complexity. So thinking about how complex it would be, how it is going to impact your business processes, how safe it would be. So thinking about those aspects. So bias and fairness, like as we discussed earlier, right? So it's based on the data, like algorithms that the system is trained on. So if you have the right data, and it's set up in the right way, it will eliminate the biases. And as you learn, as you see, that the kind of output the system is generating, you may recognize that there is some kind of a bias coming into the system. So the good part is that you can train the system back to not have those biases and be fair. So that's a part of the learning of the AI system, that how we can eliminate the biases. And then what is the regulation? What is the privacy? Because there are a lot of third-party, apps coming up. So if you're asking a lot of questions, what's the privacy aspect? Like, are you oversharing any internal information? Is it safe to share that information with the third-party app? So these are the considerations that you have to think of when you are using any such technology. And then finally, who is accountable for the results, right? So accountability still lies with you. So we have to remember this as a very, very clear perspective, that while the technology is there to support us, while all the tools are available, which may sound human-like advice now, but then at the end of the day, as a project leader, as a owner of the business, its accountability still lies with the people. So what we have to do is, since it is the accountability lies with us, ultimately we have to make sure that we are almost, we are all automatically are looking at all these aspects and covering our risks. It's a typical risk management exercise that we do, that while we use something, we assess all the risks and cover those risks and make sure that the data and the systems that the source that is being used is authentic source. So making sure that the context is relevant, the business relevance is considered. So all those pointers are to be considered while we are using this technology. Now, coming to the interactive section, so I've just set the context of what AI is, what Gen AI is, what the industry sentiment is in terms of how people see it in organizations, as well as what is the risk associated. Now, here is a segment I would like you to all use the chat pod and mention which is your favorite tech app, and this could be a B2C, B2B, any kind of app, something that you enjoy and you commonly use, and you may have used that from Gen AI perspective as well. Have you seen some changes happening in those apps? Anything new that you see from Gen AI perspective? So I'm talking about the tech apps in terms of the apps that you use on your phone, commonly used consumer apps. Amazon, I see one example as Amazon Canva. Okay, Canva is another example which is used. So Amazon is for shopping, Canva is for image editing.
Right.
Strava, okay. Each person should give at least one. Dipti, you're on mute. He's speaking.
All right. Sorry. Well, I was saying that we have a lot of participants here, so we would be seeking responses. Let's make it more interactive.
Instagram, Swiggy. I think this is Swiggy that you want to say.
Yeah.
Swiggy. I mean, we all love Swiggy and Zomato, right? It's so good to order food from there. I'm getting Amazon again. So more apps. Like, what are the apps that you use? Like, maybe for your grocery shopping or for other use cases, music, videos. What are the most popular apps in your phone, or most used apps? You may even check your phone and see which is the most used app. Spotify is a very good example. Yeah, Spotify, Netflix, right? I'm still waiting for more answers. Email, okay? Yeah, we use our mailbox all the time. Samsung Health, Google Fit, okay? Anything for, okay, Alexa. Alexa is another, this is an AI based system similar to what we in fact, I had that mentioned on the previous slide. That's part of the narrow AI segment. More apps. Anybody using Myntra, Blinkit? Okay.
Already mentioned those actually. Then
Okay, so I've just listed a few. for reference. So Zomato, Blinkit, Myntra, Spotify. And the reason for picking these is not that I'm, validating the technology. It's because these are popular apps. So I'm sure everybody must have seen one of these app at least. So, right. So the relevance, right? Yeah, I mean, if you may want to try it out as well. If you have any of these apps in your phone, they if you will see, like, I'll give you an example of Myntra, right? If you're shopping for clothes, they already have an icon on the right side which says that you can just have a chat based input of what you want to buy, and based on that it will give you recommendations of what to buy, right? Now, my personal opinion is that it's not great yet. I would rather just go through the categories and search for what I'm looking for. But the point here is that slowly you would see every app on your phone, every system, every organization is going to move to some form of generative AI. This is bound to happen. It's not going away. It's one of the other moments of revolution in technology. So we have to take that input from what we are observing in the world, right? So that is the key message here, that this is not a one-off thing. This is one of the key milestones of technology revolution, and it has a lot of opportunities as well as threats. And that's why understanding this is very, very important. Now, that's why, I mean, I've linked a lot of topics together. I've weaved through the story of, multiple topics. While they may look uh, different topics, and it's very difficult to understand how is technology revolution is linking back. But then think about moments, and everybody would have seen this chart, right? This is not new. This is just picked up from, some old content, right? So this everybody knows how the technology has evolved from industry's perspective. So right from mechanization, electrification, automation. So you all know this. This has been around for a long time. So I'm not going to go through each of these points, but just to set the stage that how things are evolving. And now with the current stage where we are in, generative AI, it's actually a new block altogether. So we have to realize this. It's important to accept and realize that how things are evolving. And now this is a new era of technology where a lot of changes are going to happen. It's like, even at the time of, I'll give you example of digitization, right? Initial years, right? When that came up, the mobile phone launch, how it revolutionized the way technology is taken, right? So I growing up, when I was a kid, it was always a question whether to buy a PC or not. So it was an option. People would say, should we buy a PC or not? And now, like when I cleared my 10th exams, I had an option of buying a scooty versus, buying a PC. It was an option, scooty versus, a PC. Now nobody will say, that buying a scooty is even an option against buying a personal computer. Everybody has a phone, a smartphone, with configuration of much higher level than what my PC used to have during those years, right? So it was a 400 megahertz PC, and now our smartphones are much higher, memory and RAM and configuration and processing power. So imagine that like a huge system is now just in our hands as a smartphone. So that's the kind of revolution I'm referring to, that how things have evolved, and link it with the internet revolution, how things have changed. And a lot of you may be able to relate that, we were at the time of the dial-ups, like, initial years of telephony and normal just SMS technology to World Wide Web, when it did not have much content initially, and email became a big thing. And then we had Web 2.0 with e-commerce coming in, social media revolution, which also happened in our lifetime pretty much, and then Internet of Things. And now the question mark, like, with generative AI, it's a next block altogether. It's important to understand and accept that it's a new era now. Because when we start thinking of generative AI and the systems in that way, we can realize that how the changes are happening and how the responsibility of project managers is also changing. And we have to be very, very open to catch the latest, knowledge and move forward with that. So now coming to the relevance of our project managers, like at the point here, right? So how is it all relevant? So the interesting aspect is that for the roles which are of project leaders and project managers, there are multifold aspects. First is as the project leaders of Gen AI projects in the organization. You could be from a manufacturing company, you could be working at a Mintra or some apparel house, some kind of manufacturing company which is traditional, maybe automotive company, right? Need not be a software company, but there is a possibility that your organization would have some form of AI, generative AI project coming in, some process automation where you could be the leader of those initiatives, or you could be the person involved in those projects, right? So from project managers perspective, one lens is that when you are leading such initiatives in the organizations, you have to take some decisions. You have to, how does it change the way the projects function, right? So that is one relevance. There is a transformation in the way the projects are run, right? Then the second aspect is like how it impacts project managers is that being in the domain of project management, like how the basic project management tasks, whether it is scheduling, planning, and then doing some data analysis, all of these elements are different stages of project management that you're going through. As project managers, how can you use Gen AI technology to ease out your own effort as a domain expert, right? So how do you do that? And then the third aspect, a different hat, is that as an individual, how do you optimize your personal work using Gen AI technology? So these are three different perspectives, from the organization perspective, from the domain perspective, and as an individual. So while for many roles it may be just one, for project managers there is a multiple impact on of the change in technology. And of course, as leaders, you're not just responsible for yourself, you're also taking the entire organization and entire team along with you. So that's an additional accountability and responsibility with the whole change. Now, what are the challenges broadly, right? When we think about Gen AI, right? So, what are the key challenges, or any change for that matter? Change management, every time is difficult, no matter what, and we all know it. Change management evolved as a separate domain altogether, topic altogether, because we realize that it's not enough to talk about change management as one component. It's a full knowledge base now. So think about how the processes are changing, right? So how it is impacting the workflows, how Gen AI is impacting the entire space, right? And some of the challenges would be resistance, lack of understanding, fear of job displacement, and that's again coming up with a lot with Gen AI, right? Data privacy concerns. You're using a lot of third-party apps, and how do we ensure that whatever information is going into different apps, that is secure and we are not oversharing. So it's important to understand these challenges, and as project leaders, have some kind of a framework established, which ensures that we are covering all these aspects. Like how do we make sure that people are aware? So changing the awareness level for the different components in the teams, right? And then once the knowledge is better and the fear of losing job goes away, like even in the earlier times, right? It's a similar situation when the computers were very very prominent in different organizations. People feared that, oh, computerization would change the landscape, we won't have jobs left. But then eventually we realized that they created another segment of jobs, which is primarily to support the business, and then the level of people is going up in terms of what their role is in organizations, which is more creative, more decision based. So these are the key challenges when we talk about in change management, and then how role of project leaders can be, right? So how you can take care of these challenges. First is setting the clear objectives. Like when you are leading, let's say you're driving, an adoption project, you define the goals and identify the key outcomes of the project. It's very, very, now, while it may sound very simplistic, but that's the beauty of it, right? At the end of the day, the concepts of project management remain the same. It's not that the concepts are going to change. The rigor with which we are going to use this and the way we set it up is an important one. Now, if you have the objectives written down very clearly in terms of what are the outcomes that you want. Now, while it may sound fancy that let's just add a chatbot to our app, let's just use some form of Gen AI in our organization. It may sound very fancy. It may sound like, okay, because consumer would love it, let's just put something there. Just understand why you are doing that. Like, what is the traditional, better way of doing it? So it's always about identifying the better way of doing it instead of just going for a technology because it sounds fancy. While I just mentioned that there are some apps where they have put in chatbots and some things, but are they actually adding value to consumers? Are they actually helping the consumers, or are they complicating the process for consumers? So while you do it right in a way that it's actually adding value and not adding to the cost of the project. So remember that every time you are adding a new technology or adding new features, it's adding cost as well. So is it valuable for the consumers? So make sure that that outcome of the project is very, very clearly defined in a way that it is adding value. Then stakeholder engagement, and then resource allocation, risk management, monitoring. So all these aspects are important, and then you would lead through the projects of the adoption based on that. Now, some of the specific elements, steps which are defined for Gen AI, adoption is again in a very simplistic way, that you first identify the challenge you want to solve. Like if you are adding a Gen AI based chatbot, anything that you think is going to be helpful for the business, identify if you're solving a challenge or you're just doing it because everybody else is. So think about what is the challenge you want to solve and what are the ways to solve it. Who are the people who should be involved? They could be, should the legal team be involved? Should the CIO of the organization be involved? What is the impact of change? Are you involving some third party apps? So does an evaluation of those apps need to happen? Do you need to sign some kind of, understanding documents with those organizations before starting to use that technology for enterprises, right? Then which processes need to be established? Identifying those processes. Then assess the tools, right? And which one is going to be the best? So there's so many tools out there. Don't start using any tool. Just assess. Again, coming back to the challenge you want to solve. The choice of tool would not depend on which one is the most popular. The choice of tool would depend upon which is the most relevant based on the business challenge that you have. And if you map it right, then the outcomes would be in much controllable, and you'll be able to cover a lot of risks associated with, or the threats associated with the technology, right? So think about picking the right tool, and also covering the gaps through some kind of agreement, some kind of privacy understanding with the organizations. Don't just go by free versions, and don't go by the free versions. That's just my personal perspective, that don't go by the free versions blindly, and especially for any data which is private to the organization or anything which is very sensitive. Don't use the free versions. Have some kind of an understanding with the organization. Have those privacy checks done. Involve the legal teams. Involve the right stakeholders, and have a very, very official way of using the Gen AI technology from the any vendor that you're working with. And then finally, how would you get the workforce started? It's important to make sure that because people are tempted, right? People are tempted to use the technology for the work. People are tempted to think about how they can shorten their workflows. Now, instead of letting everybody go there as per their own understanding, you could, as a leader, you could be the one who is telling, okay, officially this is the technology that we can use, this is how we can use it, conduct some trainings for them, tell them what to do, what not to do, define that framework, that what all things you can do with that and what all things you cannot. And when you have that structure established, you're not just working as an individual in an organization trying to figure out a shortcut method through Gen AI technology, but as an organization or as a team, you are taking a conscious choice that these are the tasks that we can fast track based on our assessment and approved list of tools that we are going to use in the team. So this is the a 5-step process of how you can imbibe it in your business, in your enterprises, and do it in a very structured way and not haphazardly. Is my take on this. And then as another perspective of how this can help, so as assistant to project managers specifically. So when you are using Gen AI technology, it can directly be an assistant. It's like your own personal assistant. as a project manager. So there are a lot of heavy lifting tasks like, creating some schedules, creating some analysis, resource allocation. There are a lot of tasks which the system can do for you just through prompts. So again, keeping in mind all the considerations of privacy and other aspects, once you have covered that, you may be able to use it as a personal assistant. So if you have to summarize data, large calculations, if you want even some recommendations, if there are scenarios, if there are stakeholder situations, that also can come in as an advice from the system that, hey, here's a scenario. What, based on the typical project management cycle or typical way the situations are handled, is a recommendation from Gen AI side, and the prompt will give you some recommendations which are world knowledge based recommendations, and not just technical aspects but also software aspects. You can also discuss, okay, this team has this challenge happening, even conflict management. You can define the situation, and the system can generate you advice on based of what typical way of handling those situations is. So there are multiple levels at which you can use it. Of course, after you have done the thorough due diligence of have making sure that there's no internal information that is going out, right, without any coverage. So make sure that you're covered there. But at the same time, think about how you can optimize your time. And then this constraint theory remains the same. There's no change there. So while you are putting in effort on the adding more tools in the system, think about the benefit, like do the balancing, because anything new that you're doing at the end of the day is adding cost to your project, right? So even if you're adding 10 subscriptions or 100 subscriptions for your team members, you're signing some privacy contracts, it's additional cost. So think about what's the value add. So you can calculate, what's the value add that you want to derive out of those tools, and is it going to be profitable overall? Is it going to add the efficiencies in the system? And do that assessment before implementation. So do that analysis, and you can let the employees focus on more high value activities, have more creative space, have more ideation and connection to business objectives related tasks, instead of focusing on tasks which are mundane and heavy lift. So that way you optimize even the quality of work that people are doing, and you know that, okay, the people are focusing more on the ideation and the things that require a lot of new knowledge, new assessment, and then anything mundane can be handled by technology. But do that assessment based on the standards of project management, and then move forward with that. For basics users, is ChatGPT and Bard free or license and fee based? So see, the risk is that the free version of ChatGPT, for example, I can tell you, it comes with a disclaimer. It does not have the latest content. So there is a cutoff date of 2021 till which it has been trained. So anything new that is happening in the world, or any new information that came after that timeline, is not in its knowledge base. So while you can now, that's why it's important to know what use case you're using it for. For example, if you tell ChatGPT, hey, here's a situation, can you write an email for me informing all the stakeholders about this situation? It will generate a standard email for you, because that email language has not evolved from 2021 to 2023. It's not a major shift. So that use case, you can still use the free version, and it's not also any private information. You can keep the context very very high level. But at the same time, if you want to use your use cases are such where you require more details and you need the latest knowledge, then using ChatGPT might be, free version might be risky. Then it would be better to use the high version, right? So that's why, and not just ChatGPT and Bard, there are multiple hundreds of other apps that are coming your way. So while these are the most popular ones, that's why I referred to the previous slide where I said, right, that identify what use case you have, identify what challenge you have, and based on the challenge, right, identify which app can be the best suited one for that particular use case. And even in that, whether the the use case is such that you can use the free version. That is an assessment that you have to do, and whether that use case requires something which is covered only in the higher version. So again, depending upon your use case, it's not about basic users or advanced users. It's about what your use case is. What is the purpose for which you're using this particular technology, right? And then of course there are many other apps like copy.ai, and then there are other apps as well. Again, use case based, right? So if you're using it to generate some rephrasing text and things like that, so that there is a different app for it. Don't use just one app for that. You can use a specialized app for that as well. So think about the use case and pick the one which you think is the most relevant, and make sure that you are covering yourself from security and privacy perspective. So I hope Atul, that answers your question. Moving forward, so this is pretty much from perspective of individual. Remember, we spoke about the enterprise perspective, the domain perspective, and the individual perspective. So three ways by which project leaders are impacted. So now this is very, very individual specific, that how does the whole revolution impact you as an individual. And it could be not just for project managers, for even people in any other role as well. How is it impacting individuals? So a lot of people may also have those threats that some apprehensions, or is it going to eliminate my job, is it going to replace me, whatever I was doing is already being taken care of for technology. So how is it going to change my life as an individual? So, and this could be, as project leaders, these could be your concerns coming from your teams as well, like the teams that you lead, right? So, what are the things that you can tell your team in terms of, as individuals, how they can evolve? First of all, the key aspect is focus on your strengths, because at the end of the day, it could be that maybe you have creative skills. It could be you are a great storyteller, right? So focus and identify what your strengths are. You could be a strategic thinker. Maybe strategy is your forte. So identify and capitalize on your strengths. And once you know which area you are expert on, the good news is that a lot of things are moving in a direction of natural language. So it's not just it's actually opening up a lot of opportunities instead of closing down. So even if there are people who do not know how to code, they can use some of the generative AI technologies to generate code also. But of course, as we discussed, it comes with a lot of risks, and we have to be very, as long as we are covered through those risks, we can use those. So we have to be aware of those aspects and then move forward with that. But at the same time, capitalizing on the strengths is important. And then focusing on here's a list of questions that you can ask yourself as individuals, that like when you are working with these technologies, what is the kind of question you're asking the technology? Because a lot of output would depend upon how you frame your questions. And there is an entire new domain that is coming up, which is prompt engineering, how you ask the right prompts to the system. So think about how you frame your questions in a better way, that the system is able to give you the most relevant result. Then keep the view of ethical considerations in your prompts, right? So the system is also learning based on your inputs. So there could be some biases that system shows up, and you can help the system get better at it. As individuals also, we have biases, right? So but it's a constant journey as individuals, and how we evolve as people. Similarly, as we evolve, we can train the system to get evolved in that perspective as well. So keep the ethical considerations in your prompts. When you're setting the context, make sure that it's ethical usage that you're doing. Then validating the results from authentic sources. This is a very important point, that don't blindly follow whatever is coming up. You need to validate, like you would do it, right? So even sometimes when you do some calculations in different systems, right? Sometimes you just do a random check and you will just validate, oh, okay, everything is right. So just a step that you should do, that are we referring to the right source? And a lot of new systems are coming up where they just don't give the answers, and those are the better ways. They also quote the source, like where is this content coming from? So that is a better system to use instead of a system which is just giving you answers without referring to the source. So validate the results from authentic sources, ensure right level of security and privacy of internal information. We discussed that. Linking the business objectives with data insights. So it's always in the context of business objectives. While in isolation the insights may be right, but you have to link it back to your organization's objectives and establish a logic, right? It cannot be in a different context. While it may be right for one context, it may not be right answer for another context. So linking to business is again an individual responsibility. And then continue to renew your knowledge and take ownership of the outcomes. So remember, the ownership lies with the individuals. We cannot say, oh my god, this was generated by ChatGPT and just copied it. So no, ultimately the outcome, even if there is a wrong output, the ownership lies with the individual. So taking ownership of the outcome is also going to stay. So that's why it's important to think about all these aspects and make sure that if you are coming up with an output which is generated, then how have you validated that it is accurate? While you use it for efficiency, but at the same time, have a mechanism for yourself to validate it and be confident about the result. So these are some questions that individuals can think about, points to ponder while using the technology. And of course, there are some skills which would be helpful. And I'm just going to look at the chatbot now. Instead of using a search engine, I prefer to use ChatGPT for analyzing the available information, the data which I feed to ChatGPT, and command it to you either summarize or rephrase. So yes, Priyanka. So as long as you are okay, if you have a higher version, great. Otherwise, just keep in mind that the databases were updated last, like in the free version in 2021. So as long as there is no new context which you need to add, it should be okay. But and the other point is not sharing anything which is private information, right? So capturing Indian Court, Supreme Court case laws, does ChatGPT require permission license, or it can go to its server and download just as public? So Atul, I'm not sure about this particular case. We'll have to do a little more research to identify what the um, there are some things I know in search which are available publicly, but whether ChatGPT already has that or not, I've not tried it personally, so we may have to check that. So Tanmay is asking, how can we develop our knowledge and field of prompt engagement? So there are a lot of courses, Tanmay, which are specifically on prompt engineering that are coming up. So you may want to go through those. It's about setting. So see, it's like simply, you're using your natural language to set the context. So the better context setting would help you getting better results. Like you could just say that, create a planner for me for so and so project, and this is the constraint, and you can set the context. If you set the context right, it will give you the right result. But if you miss a point in the context, the likelihood is that the entire plan could be wrong. So there is a whole field of prompt engineering and prompt guidance, and there is a KT Foundation methodology also, which has been existing for a long time, which is all about asking the right questions. Then
right, Dr. Khushbu, follow-up question on that. You said that there are a lot of courses available in prompt engineering. So are there specific courses which are available for project managers? Are you aware of that?
No, I'm not aware. No, I don't think there is something specific. So I think it's still fairly new. There might be something coming up. I've not seen specifically for project managers, but I did see in PMI site there is a course, and it's a free course, right?
Yeah.
It's a free course. I mean, that's a good starting point. In fact, it also contains a guidebook, which is all about, commonly used prompts for project managers. So definitely this group should look at it, because if you're using, I mean, you can just copy paste some of the prompts, change those inputs like your based on your project and use it. So that is an interesting course. And I'm not repeating any content from there because that's already out there, and it's a free course, so definitely people should look at that.
Thank you so much for pointing that out. In fact, I was going to mention this towards the end, that there's this course available, so everyone should look into that and should get benefited from it.
Yeah, absolutely. And validating the results is very important. ChatGPT gave very wrong results. Yeah, absolutely. So I'll tell you my own example. So when I was fairly new to using ChatGPT, I thought, okay, it's going to save my time. So, and I asked questions which are very, very, relevant in terms of the information available in public domain. So, during COVID time, a lot of events were not happening. So I just thought, let me ask ChatGPT, which are the top conferences and events, globally. And it gave me a very, very interesting list very confidently. And I thought, okay, this is the right list. But then I realized that the latest information was not there. So there were a lot of conferences which were launched in 2022, 23, which were not marked in that result. And that's why I'm very, very specific about making sure. And Deepak, you're right that BARD is actually, very, very good option if you want to use the latest information. And Google Bard has also tied up with Adobe. There's an agreement. So for images, it's using Adobe Firefly, and for the text part, it's powered by Google. So yes, Bard is an interesting alternative that you must check out. And it's also, it came in little late, but yeah, it's getting better. And yeah, the PMI Gen AI course is a great start. It's very, very specific to what kind of prompts you can use, but it's not exhaustive. But if you want to use it across domains, you can get better at it. I think that is going to be the future. So that's why for individuals, it's important to be able to articulate the right questions for the system. Like start understanding that what kind of questions lead to a better answer. So as you keep talking to the system, you will understand, okay, asking questions in a particular way gives me a better result. So think about that. And some of the things you can just try out, and you will learn yourself that, okay, this is a better way to do it. So while there are courses out there, but I would just recommend do a lot of practice, because as you practice, it will just become part of your skill. It's more of a skill building, because you can copy paste prompts for some of the use cases, but in a lot of situations you would need to create your own prompts. You have to think about what to ask. So as you train your mind, automatically you will learn the way of asking the right set of questions in a right way, and eventually you will be a master at it. It's just similar to how we mastered Google search. Initially, as people were struggling that, okay, we are not getting the right results, but then some people became experts that they could get to the right page immediately. Uh, Bard is, or ChatGPT is even easier, because it understands you better than what Google search used to understand. So it's much easier to get there. But absolutely, we should move forward in that direction. And it's a lot of opportunities for project managers. So actually, I want to definitely mention that this change is going to add a lot of opportunities. So if anybody is thinking how is it going to impact the jobs, or what's the, and thinking about it in a negative way. So I just want to say that if we are getting onto the trend quickly and making sure that we are aware, we are learning, this is actually going to offer a lot of opportunities, because a lot of organizations will go through transformations, and whenever there is a transformation, project managers, change managers are in high demand. So it's going to be a good move for project managers as a career. And a lot of things which we never liked doing as project managers, right? So things which are tedious, for that we can smartly have ways in a systematic way to use the technology to speed up our work. So that's a good sign as we move forward.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Khushbu. That was quite a power-packed, I would say, session. And I'm sure all of us have now learned a lot about Gen AI and would be using that in our daily lives. And would definitely try to include Gen AI as part of the work that we do on daily basis. Guys, if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hands, though we are top of the hour, but we can take up one or two questions, right, Dr. Khushbu?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So any questions that you might have, feel free to ask them. You can raise your hands. Though, Dr. Khushbu, you've already answered most of the questions which came up in the chat. Just in case anyone has further questions, feel free to raise your hands. No hands raised. I take silence as no. Seems like you've cleared all the doubts. And seems like now all of us are excited about this and going to maybe include Gen AI in one form or the other in our daily work that we do. And everyone's appreciating. So thank you so much for that. With that, from North India chapter, I would like to thank you, Dr. Khushbu, for today's session. And we at North India chapter will be planting a tree at Trees of Delhi in your honor. So
that's so nice. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for taking out time and imparting this knowledge to all of us on a Sunday morning. I know it's not easy, but thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It was a pleasure.
Great. Thank you. All right, for everyone, I'm displaying on my screen the PDU information. In case you want to take a screenshot, feel free to take that. So you need to go to PMI CCRS dashboard, report, click on report PDUs, click on course or training, and the provider details will be PMI North India chapter, course name will be Learning by 3.0, Gen AI from Business Lens and Aspects of Embracing Change with Tech Evolution. And the PDU claim for this course is C1189FC69D. And start date and end date would be today's date, which is 8th of October 2023. And the contact person, in case you face